Greetings and salutations, folks. My name is Nick, and welcome back to Dark Souls 3, where there is only a very small amount left. A very simple thing to do, more or less, is to end the game, to defeat the final boss, the Lord of Cinder himself. Part of me is feeling confident because of the DLC. Like, I hadn't actually beaten the DLC before playing it during this playthrough. Like, when Dark Souls 3 was new, I only had played through the main game. Let's see, there's Kiln of the First Flame. And when I actually fought the final boss in my original playthrough, I did summon a couple people with me. I don't think it was actual players, I think it was just NPCs. But my goal today is to defeat said final boss without NPCs. My other goal today is to have a different ending, because in my original playthrough I linked the First Flame. I have given eyes to the level up lady, the fire, I forget what her title is, but I believe she can help me end the cycle of flame, which is itself a curse upon this land, upon everybody in it. Messages slowly, but also I don't think I even talked, I barely talked to anybody in this playthrough, so maybe I missed the people that could be my allies. So, you know, them's the breaks. Hello. Soul of Cinder. Yep. That was obvious, but I missed it. A little bit extra rolls, but you know. Alright, let's top ourselves off. Not exactly the best place to top ourselves off, but you know. It worked. I don't remember this guy having multiple versions, multiple phases, and if that's the case, this might actually be... relatively easy. Sir, is that poison that you're spewing? Okay, top ourselves off just in case. This is fine. Top ourselves off. Yep, sure, why not? All the way. Or you do have another phase. He does, in fact, have another phase. Okay, that is a very rude juggling. I'm amazed that he missed. Oh. Oh no. Have I overleveled? Have I overstayed my presence here? Oh. I'm so sorry, Soul of Lords. Let's at least look at you. Wherever you are. Oh, you're in the first menu. I think. Since Lord Gwyn, the first Lord of Cinder, many exalted lords have linked the first flame, and it is their very souls that have manifested themselves as defender of the flame. Yeah, like, although in my defense, even if it seems like I've kind of maybe I've leveled myself up too much, or maybe that's just a simple boss fight, and fighting him directly after fighting Slave Knight Gale. Like, Slave Knight Gale has more going on than this boss. Like, this boss is very, very straightforward. So it definitely feels like a big step back in challenge. The Firekeeper, that's who we're summoning to end the cycle of flame. The Firekeeper. We have given her eyes to see. Though, to be honest, I've never been particularly attached to any Dark Souls story. They have existed in the games, and I have played along with them. And have seen them. Dark Souls 1's got some good moments. Dark Souls 2's got some good moments, actually, too. Does this game have good moments in its story? Now clap your hands about the fire. And it goes out forever.
Quickly fades. Darkness will shortly settle.
Oh, me and my stupid hammer.
But one day, tiny flames will dance across the darkness. Like embers linked by Lord's Pass.
Is that presenting the idea that, like, the flame will continue itself regardless of our own intentions? Like, the idea that people have been participating in this flame ceremony, in this relinking of the fire, generation after generation.
Hearest thou my voice still?
Yes. That even plunging the world into darkness, like, that is still not the natural state of the world, and that life finds a way. I don't know. Like, with Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Demon Souls, even Bloodborne, I've never really been enraptured by the story. It's all about the gameplay. The story is just enough. As for the gameplay of Dark Souls 3, it's good. It's more Dark Souls. It's interesting to play Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3. I guess I didn't play it back to back. I played Bloodborne in between the two. Like, Dark Souls 2 felt slower to Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 3 feels much faster, especially due to its Bloodborne influences. But after playing a lot of Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 2 is a long game. It's much longer than any of the other Souls. I feel like I got more in tune with the pacing of Dark Souls 2, even though it's still slow in comparison. There's still a little bit of sluggishness in comparison to Souls 1. Like, I felt it was easier for myself to get more in tune with it, whereas with Dark Souls 3, the speed, I don't know if the speed is necessarily a benefit here, especially since there are a lot of other subsystems that make things tricky. Like they added some more stability subsystems, staggering subsystems. Now, at this point, I should put a disclaimer. I barely know what I'm talking about in regards to this. The most that I can say is that oftentimes it'll feel as though things like stability, things like staggering, don't necessarily seem to work 100% of the time. Like, for example, like there's the two-sword wielding dark-signed knight right before you find the Spear of the Church in the Ringed City DLC. That particular enemy, I found I was able to stagger every time with one hit of the hammer, unless he was in the middle of an animation. And I found that to be the tricky part, the part that made a lot of its stagger system very unpredictable, which makes the fighting a little bit unpredictable when you're expecting certain outcomes and the enemy just powers through your attack time and time again when their animation has already started. Like the faster, the speed of the game definitely makes the game more exciting at the beginning when you're first starting out and you're just fighting against regular enemies, because like you find yourself having to move quicker and dodge faster. It's only as the game proceeds that like these subsystems start to spiral off and start to take more notice. You could say the same about the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, where when you're level 1, you're level 2, everything works fine. But as the stats start to get more into play, then the combat becomes a little bit of a pain in the ass in itself. I also feel as though shields are a little bit less. Like, you really have to pump your stats to make shields worth it. Like, I would have to really have put a lot of points early on in getting a larger shield, in regards to getting better armor, in order to gain that stability so that shields are worth it. But it almost feels as though shields have slowly become worth less and less with every game. To the point in which, like, in this game, I had a shield for maybe a quarter of the time. I went two-handed with the Uchi, pretty early on, but I ended up just getting rid of the shield at one point because it seemed as though, like, enemies would just come at you with, like, combos. Like, every enemy had, like, a lengthy combo. Every enemy has, like, a 360-degree attack. And there's a specific reason for this, and for a lot of the things in Dark Souls 3. And I feel as though that specific reason is they were trying to kind of circumvent prior strategies. They were trying to get around... they were trying to break expectations for what you would expect out of a Dark Souls game. And if there's anything we can learn from the first Lords of the Fallen game, is that we don't necessarily want a carbon copy of the original gameplay. Like, there needs to be some sort of iteration, otherwise you're just kind of raising your shield, circling around, backstab. And, like, in Dark Souls 1, that can take you a long way. Dark Souls 2 staves this off by having just big enemies fight you. Like, and that towards the end, big enemies and enemies with magical attacks that break through shields. So towards the end of the game, as more and more bosses, especially the DLC, more and more bosses started to show up that have those types of attacks, I stopped using a shield because what good was it? And started just two-handing my weapons because the shield was not helping. But for Dark Souls 3, it felt as though the addition of, like, enemies that have larger ranges of motion, larger ranges of attacks, plus extensive combos made the shield less interesting, a less interesting path for me to follow. And that's something that should be noted, that, like, I feel that anybody can beat a Dark Souls game. I think that certain DLC areas can be extremely tricky. I'm looking at you, Frigid Tundra, or Frozen Tundra. I forget what the name of it is in Dark Souls 2, but it is the worst area in every game. Let us begin Journey 2 in this state. That's fine. I don't care. But I still believe that anybody can beat a Dark Souls game, because I've seen Let's Players who are terrible at these games, and they've won. So, if they can beat it, so can you. This means, however, that everybody essentially creates their own strategy for how to win. Whether it's with a shield, whether it's without a shield, whether it's with magic. I've never really gone the magic route in a Souls game, but there are people out there who have. So I suppose that's basically me saying everything that I've just said. It might be just more inherent to my experience, and there are other people who've probably made it work. But at the same time, it definitely feels as though these subsystems feel like they must be fought around. They must be navigated. That they're not exactly very... Understandable is close word. It's in the neighborhood. Clear from the get-go. Like, you walk up to enemies towards the beginning, you hit them, they stagger. You walk up to enemies towards the end, you hit them, they stagger, unless they're doing something, in which they don't. So, it's still an enjoyable game, and I feel like they really kind of went for fidelity over variety in this case. Like, Dark Souls 2 is definitely the variety show. There's so much different stuff. Oh, sorry. See what I mean by speed, though? Like, and if anything, that enemy teaches you that, you know, we're doing things a lot faster now. So, you gotta move, and that's one of the things early on that affects the pacing. But no, it's still a good game. It's a high fidelity, big areas, big budgets, big bosses. Like, there's an intent to kind of link, so to speak, Dark Souls 1 and 2. But, like I said, the storyline does not necessarily excite me. It's neat being able to go back to places like Anne Orlando so many years later. But it's also like, that nobody's been here for thousands of years. You're basically looking at a cemetery long abandoned by its people. I will not kick. That spin move really takes extra time. Although, what takes even more extra... Oh, no, wait. This one has the bad, special. This one has the one that gives you extra poise. But takes away your damage. And I suppose I should talk about that, is, like, having weapons give you, like, special abilities. Like, it's interesting, but I feel like it's not at the beginning. And towards the beginning, it was basically my way of actually succeeding at the game. Like, my attacks were not enough. I needed to count on my special attack to really carry me through. But as the game proceeded, the special attack really, because I wasn't putting any points into FP and such, the special attack really wasn't holding pace with just a regular attack. And because I needed every single Estus that I could get my hands on, like, I stopped even using any of the Ashen Estus Flask. Like, I feel, and also as I started getting other weapons, like the special ability that gets attached to the weapon, I just am not interested in. Like, I'm not interested in the special attack attached to this weapon. The one attached to this one is cool. It looks cool. It's fun. Like, and I wish there was maybe a little bit more customization in regards to that. But then everything is going to have a very scripted animation, so you can only expect so much. Anyway, I feel as though I'm rambling at this point. So let's close it up. Dark Souls 3. Solid game. Maybe their desire to go towards speed over finesse was not exactly the best choice. But it is definitely a fast action game of the Souls variety that is a good time, even if it's a bit of a struggle to get to its pace, to match its speed, as well as its expectations. If I had to rate the Souls games, well, Bloodborne would obviously be at the top. Bloodborne, number 1. Would Dark Souls be 2? Dark Souls 2. So not rank 1 is Bloodborne. Rank 2 is Dark Souls. Rank 3 might be Demon Souls. I might actually choose Demon Souls, and it's not out of, like, dislike for Dark Souls 2. I do appreciate Dark Souls 2 a little bit more than I used to, because Dark Souls 2 would be taking my spot in front of this game, which, like, I feel as though even though the combat is slower, how did... Okay, finally. I was gonna say, how did I miss all of those attacks? But there's a certain finesse to it that is missing out of Dark Souls 3. Also, I just realized the enemies that mutate into strange beings, like, that storyline just kind of drops out entirely. What happened to that? What was the deal with that? Ooh. This first enemy that we're fighting, like, he looks like a regular knight. And then he explodes with a parasite. And the parasites just kind of disappear. What was the deal? That's Dark Souls 3 lore. I'd have to look that up. Then I'd have to get invested in the storyline. Got any suggestions for something to play next? Leave them down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And have yourselves a good night.